whoever is listening, however you're listening, I want to welcome you back to your MWP, also known as your man with a plan. This is the week, College Football Championship Saturday. It's been a journey. We've held our breath all the way through it, but it's finally here. We have rematches, unproven teams, familiar faces, and a lot to look forward to this weekend. I've reiterated many times that I believe this football season and sports in general, amongst everything that's been going on, it's been a special year. It's been unique. And I'm so excited that we've gotten this far. And I can't wait to see how the teams react to it and how the world just sits back, relax, and watches a great weekend of football. So, here's how it's going to go today. We have 5 Power 5 championship games. We're going to go in order of how they will be on the schedule. So we're going to start with the Pac-12. Now the Pac-12, they've kind of, like the Big Ten, started late, had some adversity, and here they are. Lined back up with everybody. It seems like we're back to square one. It's USC versus Oregon. Although, for Oregon, they weren't supposed to be in this title game, which the Washington Huskies originally won the division at 4-1, and now the Oregon Ducks take over. The Oregon Ducks, led by Mario Cristobal, are looking to go back-to-back title wins. And this is their team. This is a team trying to find their identity in the absence of NFL quarterback Justin Herbert, who led them to a Rose Bowl victory last year over Wisconsin. Their quarterback Tyler Schroe is trying to prove himself that Oregon can win with a more complete team with him at the honor center. They also have running back Travis Dye, who has over 300 yards in the 5 games that they've played, and he's a force on the backfield. They also have, speaking of forces, Kayvon Thibodeau, a powerhouse at defensive end, and is the real catalyst for that defense and sets the tone on each down. Their opponent USC, who's sitting at 5-0, is looking to make their case for a New Year's Six appearance. USC has been in shambles for a long time, and it feels like they're finally back with Clay Helton leading the charge. They look to punch their ticket with quarterback Keldon Slovis, who looks solid this year and could progress to be a Heisman quarterback and maybe even an NFL star in years to come. I think it's going to be a great matchup, and I can see why people are hesitant to tune in on Friday night, because there's not a playoff team really being involved. There's not value to this, but if this season's taught us anything, it could be the last game ever played. So I'm excited to watch it for its value in the unique Friday night matchup. Pac-12. Keldon Slovis, Tyler Schroe. I think it'll come down to the quarterbacks, and I think Slovis is going to take USC over the top and make their slim case for the playoffs if the world were to fall apart on Saturday. And I think USC takes this game 27-17. So, to start off our Saturday slate, we have the Big 12 title game. Iowa State versus Oklahoma. Now, this will have 2 games you can flip back and forth from, as you'll have Iowa State and Oklahoma, and Ohio State and Northwestern. So we're going to start with the Big 12. This is the matchup where, like the Oregon game, playoffs aren't necessarily a factor here, but they could be, depending on how things play out in the rest of the games. So let's start with Iowa State. Iowa State is led by head coach Matt Campbell, and his squad is backed by Brock Purdy and running back Breece Hall, who was able to gain over 1,000 yards on the season. And unfortunately, in his own conference, his play is being shadowed by star running back Chuba Hubbard, who opted out at the end of the year and is going to be in the NFL draft. Iowa State's looking to put their name on the list of contenders for years to come. This matchup is huge for them in getting recruits to Pay attention to the Cyclones saying, "We are here. We're not just the squad that upsets and plays spoiler every year. They're legit. They're looking to be consistent." Speaking of consistency, Oklahoma is no stranger to Championship Saturday. They've won the last 3 on their way to 3 semifinal appearances in which they've lost all of them. But they've been there, done that. Oklahoma is led by head coach Lincoln Riley, and he looks to have his offense, led by Spencer Rattler, to take them back to the New Year's Six Bowls, playing in that postseason football. Oklahoma has also done something this year that is unheard of in the Big 12, and that is playing defense. Oklahoma ranks in the top 30 in points per game allowed, and this is a huge achievement on Oklahoma's side. They've played in these playoff games against Alabama and LSU notably, where they've given up 45 points, 63 points. Oklahoma hasn't been able to keep up with the offense they have, and they've had playmakers. They've had Baker Mayfield, CeeDee Lamb, Hollywood Brown, so many guys that have gone to the NFL and made names for themselves, but couldn't get it done on the defensive side. They just needed one stop, or 2 in some cases, to be able to compete with these teams. So no matter what happens on the Big 12 title game, they're making strides and becoming a more complete college football team, and I'm ecstatic to see where they go next. Let's talk about Spencer Rattler for a second. Spencer Rattler is a guy who had big shoes to fill coming in. He had to fill the role of Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, all Heisman winners or finalists, who've put up massive numbers in their first years under Lincoln Riley and made the playoffs. Rattler, unfortunately, isn't able to do that, but he's been solid nonetheless, throwing for over 2,000 yards and had 20 touchdowns on the season. And this is without a consistent wide receiver group who hasn't been able to get over 500 yards, but with a new quarterback coming in every year, you miss that consistency and that rotation. I think in the end, Oklahoma is a more complete team, and the been there, done that. There's not going to be any nerves. They're going to know what it takes to get to the next step. And while Iowa State will hang around with them and compete, I think Brock Purdy will make throws. I think Iowa State's defense will come to play. I just think Oklahoma, the experience trumps all. And despite starting 1-2, they will be Big 12 champs, winning 30-21. Up next, Ohio State versus Northwestern, perhaps the most controversial of the 5 matchups, with Ohio State sitting at 5-0, and will only win 6 games when it is all said and done, and potentially a playoff spot. You've heard Dan Mullen, Dabo Swinney sound off on why they don't deserve to be there. So there's going to be a lot of players on Ohio State looking to prove that they belong, despite the COVID situation, despite the lack of games played. They want to show the entire world they're legit, and they'll look to do it against the Northwestern Wildcats. Northwestern is a team that finished 3-9 last year, and is backed up by QB Patrick Ramsey, who's had over 1,500 yards and has thrown 9 touchdowns. Nothing solid, but it's something that just needed to get along, because Northwestern's defense is legit. They are a top 15 defense that is very physical on the ball and flies to make plays. Ohio State's going to have a lot of work to do, but they have talent, and they are led by head coach Ryan Day. Justin Fields, let's talk about him. Future NFL quarterback, is in the discussion with his counterpart Trevor Lawrence. They've been compared since high school, and they played last year in the semifinal where Ohio State was booted 29-23 in what many believe is a controversial playoff semifinal. That was a classic, but had some issues. We had the targeting call that was the catalyst for Clemson's comeback, and then we had the fumble call that should have been returned for a touchdown, but was ruled dead. And then Clemson and Trevor Lawrence led a drive that broke Ohio State's heart, and you guys all have seen the picture of Justin Fields holding his hands on his helmet after throwing the interception to Nolan Turner. That's been on his mind for a long time, and now he's having to balance so many things. COVID, cancellations. How am I going to redeem myself? He's going to find out on Saturday what this Ohio State team is made of. They're a solid squad despite the games they haven't played, and I am looking for them to prove me wrong, because I've been a critic. On MWP, we have been very critical of Ohio State, and that they don't deserve to be in the playoff. I want them to show me that they're a playoff team. The questionable game against Indiana, Malik Willis throwing touchdown after touchdown, Justin Fields throwing picks left and right, Ohio State getting bailed out week in and week out. I want them to show me this weekend that they're a top 4 team, and there should be no doubt why, despite their games and despite their brand, they are a team worth putting up against a Notre Dame, a Clemson, an Alabama, an A&M. We'll find out. Northwestern has had a special season, but I don't think that their offense is capable of keeping up with Ohio State. I think it's a game where Northwestern's going to show up and they're going to hang around, but once that adrenaline dies down, there's going to be a significant talent gap. And I think Ohio State eventually will pull away, but it will be a physical fight. And I think Ohio State has too much for the Wildcats to take over, and they will take the game 24-10. We move on to the ACC title game between the Clemson Tigers and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. This is probably the most important game of the weekend. With the shoe throw, this is the game with the most playoff implications laid inside there. It's number 2 Notre Dame, number 3 Clemson, who previously faced off in a top 5 matchup where Notre Dame took down DJ Uyunglele and that Clemson Tigers depleted team, and we'll get to the depletion, 47-40 in double overtime. I think we all had a feeling that this was going to come back. Notre Dame and Clemson were destined to meet up for round 2. And Clemson came in that game as the alpha of the ACC and the alpha of college football in general. And they fell. And many were looking for the last 2 months of, why did Clemson lose? Well, they also had 6 starters out. They had their obvious Trevor Lawrence, their phenom, their guy, their future number 1 pick in the NFL, undisputed since he took down Alabama his freshman year. But Notre Dame is aware of this. They know they didn't have James Skalski, a physical, to-the-ball linebacker, Tyler Davis, who has made huge strides his sophomore year. How is this going to impact the game? The Notre Dame team's still there. Dabo Swinney and Clemson are no stranger to this ACC title game. But what they're not familiar with is an ACC team that's competitive in these title games. This will be the most contested ACC title game since 2015, where where North Carolina and Clemson faced off and won 45-40. And it started a streak of 5 straight title wins. There's playmakers all over the field. So let's shift to Notre Dame. Ian Book, Kyron Williams, who has 1,000 yards on the season and 12 touchdowns. He will look to be the X factor as they'll try to take away the run for Ian Book. Ian Book is a guy who's really impressed me because all he does is win. He's 30-3 as a starter at Notre Dame and looks to get 3 more games in and lead Notre Dame to the championship game and avenge that 2018 loss in the Cotton Bowl. They also have a lot on their hands, as facing a team for the second time can't be easy. This is a powerhouse in Clemson that is looking desperate for the first time in a while. We're seeing where they have to win to get in. It's usually, we'll play this Miami team, they're not really that top 10 in 2017, or we'll play Virginia in 2019, we'll play Pittsburgh in 2018. This is going to be a real challenge for Clemson. Even though, with all the injuries, with all the hype, I think it lives up to its first round matchup. I think Clemson will be on top for a while, but I think Notre Dame will rally, because I think this team coached by Brian Kelly has some real heart and some real passion in this team, that they're looking to break the stereotype that Notre Dame can compete in these conferences. Notre Dame can compete in these big games. I think it'll be a battle as we wait for the SEC championship. And I think Clemson in the end takes it 35-27. But that doesn't mean Notre Dame's necessarily out. They've done enough in my mind to secure a playoff spot. And how much will that playoff spot mentality have an impact on this game? Does Notre Dame go, oh, we've got this. We don't really have to do much. We just have to show up. I'm worried that could potentially ruin the game. In human nature, it's tough not to look ahead, especially when they're deciding the next day. They're going to see a 10-1 Notre Dame, and then the rest of the field where you have Iowa State and A&M to pick from. There's a lot to balance on Selection Sunday when Clemson wins, in my mind. But I think Notre Dame's done enough, so we'll see how mentally they prepare for that. So let's finish off with the SEC championship game. And this was an interesting one to break down. Florida and Alabama. Oh boy. The shoe. Let's start with that. You're watching your LSU-Florida game. Florida's struggling, but you believe that eventually the skill of Florida will trump LSU. They get a stop, but what? A tout? Oh, there's a flag on the field. I wonder what that is. Oh, okay. Someone threw a shoe. LSU takes advantage of the penalty and the mistake, drives the length of the field, kicks a 57-yard field goal, and knocks Florida off. 2-loss Florida? Totally deflated. Marco Wilson, quite the funniest takeover on the internet, where all I see on my phone in my media is shoes. And heck, the playoff graphic was shoes to introduce the selection show last night. Oh, it was fantastic. I didn't miss anything. This game worries me now because the Gators looked lost. They looked immature, volatile even. They're coached by Dan Mullen, who is a personality. We all know this. There's been fights. Dan Mullen's sounded off to the media. It appears that there's going to be a lot of emotions coming into this game, and that'll be Florida's undoing. Because Alabama's been there, done that. We're experienced. Nick Saban's not going to let a shoe be thrown. Are you kidding me? With the national championship hopes on the line? That's just the difference between coaching and a program. The standard. You don't toss somebody's shoe after a third down stop that's crucial to your season. Alabama's been there. They've done that. They're led by veteran Mac Jones, who could win the Heisman now with Kyle Trask's slump against LSU, which we'll talk about in a second. They also have a powerhouse Najee Harris against a Florida defense that's ranked only 50th in the entire country and has allowed a lot of people worried. Can they hang with Alabama? Is Kyle Pitts going to be healthy? Can Kyle Trask win without Kyle Pitts? And my answer is no. Kyle Trask looked absolutely lost out there, throwing balls that he shouldn't have, throwing jump balls that he's used to having some help with Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is a star, and if he's on the field, that could be the difference maker for Florida as they look to erase some woes that they've created. There's some division with this game. Part of me wants to believe that there's going to be competitive Florida. They're going to show up. It's going to be a fireworks show till the end. And then part of me believes that it'll be over before it began, and that LSU game was a bad omen for the Gators. There's too many weapons on that Alabama side. A top 10 offense that can score as quick as you blink. Play action with Najee Harris, toss it over the middle to Devonta Smith, and it's just a 70-yard touchdown. And just like that, you're down 7-0 in Atlanta. With not a crowd to help you out, no momentum. I think Saban shows why he's the king of the SEC and why he's ready to be back in the playoff. And that the LSU one-year wonder thing, that's over. Florida, that's not happening. It's time for Alabama to be back in the playoff. With Saban leading the charge, I think that Bama takes this game easy and rolls onto the playoff. 45-24. So that was our quick breakdown of the Power 5 championship games. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'm excited to see where this takes us to the postseason. I really enjoyed researching these games and figuring out who's the X factor for each team, how they got there. And we will get back to breaking down NFL as the playoffs are nearing the corner. We could talk about the Browns-Ravens, how that is the game of the year. I want you to leave your thoughts down below, and I just want to thank you again for coming. It means the world to me how you've responded to this. This is your MWP. I hope you have a fantastic day, and that you stay safe and enjoy some college football.